Hello, this is John Francois with the Pistol Report. I'm the senior instructor for Archangel Technologies. Last time we left off with single action only 1911s. And before we move on to striker fire, let's remember our 4 rules of gun safety. The firearm is always considered loaded. Don't put your finger on the trigger until you're on target and ready to shoot. Know your target and what's beyond it. And don't let the barrel of your firearm point at something you're not willing to destroy. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and move on. And before we start with the striker fire, I wanted to make a point about the 1911s. When I was a young policeman, I investigated a possible murder. And while investigating that murder, I discovered that the 1911 type pistol can be a real hazard if you don't know how that firearm functions. A man was living with his son in an apartment in the San Fernando Valley. And me and my partner received a call, shots fired, possible homicide. When we arrived, we found an individual in his walk-in closet, crumpled in the corner with 1 gunshot wound to the chest. The son that lived with him was not in the apartment at the time. And when he arrived back and he saw his father crumpled, and the first thing me and my partners thought was, well, if he was the suspect that shot his own father, why would he show back up drinking a milkshake and then fall apart when he saw his father? So on subsequent investigation, it seems that the gentleman had his 1911 pistol on a shelf where he could not see it, but he could reach it. And on that shelf, it was laying just in this attitude, with the thumb safety down on the surface of the shelf. And when he reached up to find his firearm, his thumb went through the trigger guard. His fingers were on the back strap safety we talked about. And when he moved the firearm to pull it, the thumb safety actually was disengaged. And as he brought it forward and the weight tipped, the firearm went off, sending 1 round directly through his heart and killing him. And so I bring that up to make sure you understand that the 1911 pistol, very accurate, great pistol, but it might not be something that you want to get into until you learn about it. That incident caused me to go buy 2 1911s and 2 books on the 1911. Because my theory is when something scares me like that, then I need to go ahead and learn everything I can about it. And so after I actually found out how the firearm works, all that nervousness and fear evaporated, and it's one of my favorite firearms to carry and to shoot. So let's move on to the striker fire. We covered revolvers, we covered double single action pistols, we covered the single action 1911 types, and now the most prevalent type of pistol is going to be your polymer framed striker fire. And one of the fastest way to determine if you have or if you're dealing with a striker fire is I'd like you to notice at the back where on a double single action there'd be a hammer, it is a flat plate. That plate is at the very back because this firearm is considered a striker fire because there is no hammer that strikes a firing pin. There is no firing pin that comes back. Everything happens internal. If you'd like to see it, you should get online and go watch one of the animations about how a Glock works. Very interesting, but it's a striker, not a firing pin. Now, another thing with the striker fire that's very interesting is some may have a manual safety for you, but most of the time they just come with this split trigger design. And I know it's probably impossible to see it now, but that split trigger is the safety. If that first part of the trigger that's sticking up doesn't get to press down, it will not fire. So that's one of the safety mechanisms. I'm sure there's also internal safeties in here that will prevent any kind of discharge if the trigger's not pulled. But that's the Glock type, and there's so many different striker fire types. They even have metal framed striker fire without the polymer frame. It's just up to the engineer and the company to determine how they want to create that firearm. And once again, if you notice on this compact striker fire pistol, that flat base plate is a very good indicator that you're dealing with a striker fire. Now, so that nobody's confused, you also have pistols that don't have an external or a hammer shown that are not striker fire. I mean, on some of your snub-nosed revolvers, they'll have the frame that shrouds this hammer. You won't be able to see the hammer, but it's in a track in between on either side of the hammer, and as you look at it from the outside, you cannot see the hammer, and it's pretty difficult to manually cock it. But it makes it very useful if you want to carry this pistol in your pocket or carry it for concealed purposes, because this hammer spur is no longer a problem getting hooked onto your clothing or anything else. So also, some of your larger semi-automatic double single actions will also come with what they call a bobbed hammer, where this is smooth and along the back. So it may even confuse somebody if they see no hammer spur or hammer. But most of those are double action only, and that was a prevalent type of pistol in law enforcement for a while, where even though it was a semi-auto, each time you fired it, it would cycle, but the hammer would come back down, and it would be double action every shot. So that we covered that. Overview on your striker fire. Striker fire is most likely going to have a polymer frame in most instances, but not all. And split trigger design and the very flat back plate. So until next time, we're going to end here and stay safe.